Hi, I'm Steve G. Jones, clinical hypnotherapist, and I want to talk to you about phobias. The advanced hypnotherapy technique of dealing with phobias is very powerful. Now realize that phobia is a clinical term, so a hypnotherapist would not diagnose something as a phobia because hypnotherapists are not licensed psychologists or psychiatrists or other licensed medical professionals who would diagnose something. But I'm just using the word phobias so that you and I know what we're talking about. We're talking about fears. We're talking about things that people are afraid of. Things that people are afraid of to the point of being debilitated by that fear. So it's not just a fear. For example, I have a fear of heights, but it's a healthy fear. My fear of heights is healthy in the sense that it keeps me from doing risky things up in the air because I understand the principle of gravity. That is a healthy fear. When we get to the point of phobia, we have something that's stopping someone from doing things that are part of their normal lives. For example, I'm okay with going up to the 15th floor of a hotel and staying there for a night or two or a week. I'm okay with that. I can look out the window and everything's fine. But a person with a phobia would perhaps find it difficult to do that, or perhaps they would not even go to the 15th floor of the hotel because of being afraid. So it actually hinders what's going on in their lives. That is what I'm talking about when I talk about phobias. We're helping someone get over a fear that is slowing them down. Recently, for example, I was asked to be part of a project which is going to be presented to the cable channel Animal Planet, helping people overcome their fears of animals. Now, if people have a fear of animals and they never encounter animals, that's probably fine because it's not part of their lives. It's not something they encounter every day. But if people are around animals, or perhaps they want to have a pet and they're afraid of animals, that is a challenge. That is something that needs to be overcome. So the way I work with that is the same way I work with fear of heights or any other thing which we could classify as a phobia, and here's how I do it. I have the patient imagine themselves in a theater, and they're sitting in the front row of the theater watching a movie, but the movie is starring them. So they are in the front row of the theater watching a movie in which they are starring, and they're also running the projector booth. You know, when you go into a movie theater and you look back and you see the light coming out of a square window, that's the projector booth. And the person running the projector has control over the movie. They can turn the movie off at any time, for example, if they chose to. So the person's consciousness has three locations. One is in the seat, the front row seat watching the movie, a fairly safe place. The second one is in the movie, a fairly scary place sometimes, but we ease the patient into that. And the third location is the most powerful and safest of all, which is in the projector booth. At any time, the person's focus can move to any of those three locations. So when I work with someone to overcome their phobias, I do what I'm about to share with you during the script. This would take the place of the script. And I design an alternate script geared only toward overcoming phobias. The alternate script would consist of a story. I'm telling them a story in which they are in the theater. So the story starts out during the script part of the hypnotherapy session with them in the theater. And I say something along the lines of, imagine yourself in the theater now, and you're watching a movie, and the movie is starring you. And you are also in the projector booth. So at any time, you can move into the movie, or you can sit in the front row of the theater, or you can be in the projector booth. And you can turn the movie off if you choose to. The choice is yours. You can move locations. But if you're comfortable right now, I'd like you to imagine yourself watching the movie. And in the movie, you're in a field, and you're very safe and relaxed and protected. And across the field, you see a dog walking slowly toward you, and you are walking slowly toward the dog, and you're smiling. And then I, of course, advance the story. I have them encounter the dog, I have them pet the dog, I have them become very comfortable with the dog, play with the dog, perhaps play fetch with the dog, different things that a person would normally do with a dog as long as the interaction was friendly. Everything goes perfectly well in the story. Everything is fine. At a certain point in the story, perhaps 3 or 4 minutes into the story, I invite them to imagine themselves in the actual movie. I invite them to imagine themselves seeing reality from the point of view of the them in the movie. Because remember, that's them in the movie. So they can move into that perspective during the story, and they can then see themselves interact with the dog. I also tell them that at any time while I'm talking, they can move either back to the front row of the theater or to the projection booth, and at any time they can shut the movie off. So it gives them a lot of versatility, it gives them a lot of power, but it also gives them a lot of opportunity and a bit of a challenge to move into the movie. And I remind them that it's only in their imagination. Even if they were to imagine themselves moving into the movie, they're still only doing it in their imagination. But something interesting happens when we encounter something in our imagination. Our body physiologically reacts as if it's actually happening. So all the fear that they would normally encounter, which is hopefully subdued a little bit because I have calmed them down, because I'm talking very calmly during the session, I'm telling them that everything's okay, but all the fear that they would encounter in an actual encounter with a dog comes into play, perhaps to a lesser degree because I'm talking them through it and calming them down, but they're able to work that fear out. Their brain, physiologically, will send impulses to their body, and that's something that we can actually demonstrate scientifically. If you imagine something, your brain will actually send impulses to your body as if it's actually happening. If you imagine yourself running, for example, your brain will send impulses to your legs and to the specific muscles that will be running, and those specific muscles will receive impulses from your brain, not to the extent that they would in full awakening consciousness when you're actually running, but we can actually measure the brain impulses that would go to those muscles through the nervous system, even when something's just being imagined. So that's how powerful imagery can be. So you're creating something that the body is taking as real. What's the advantage to that? The advantage is that they have practice doing it. So rather than having to take them to a field and introduce them to a dog and hope everything goes okay, you are having them practice perfectly in their mind, and their body is physiologically getting the advantage it would if it were actually practicing it in reality. So the old way of doing it is the way that psychologists and psychiatrists do it, which is desensitizing the person to it, taking them to a field. The first day you look at the dog, the second day you extend your hand toward the dog, the third day you actually pet the dog, the fourth day you maybe pet the dog a little more, the fifth day you're running with the dog, and so forth. That's how this procedure can be done by a psychologist or a psychiatrist in reality. That's a common therapeutic technique to desensitize someone to a situation, whether it's overcoming fear of elevators or dogs or anything else. You would do it in reality, but you don't have to. You do not have to do it in reality. With hypnotherapy, they can have the benefit of experiencing it in reality because the body is reacting physiologically just as if they were actually there, but they're sitting in the safety and comfort of the hypnotherapist chair. So that is the way that I work with phobias. I systematically desensitize the patient to whatever it is that they are afraid of, whatever it is that's the root of the phobia, and they become comfortable with it so that the next time that they actually encounter it, everything's okay because they've already had practice. So that is the way that I work with phobias using hypnotherapy. So in the diagram on the board, you are looking down on a movie theater from above. The bottom X marks the spot where the projection booth is. That's the booth from which the movie is shown. The next X, as you move up the board on the right, is the seating position, which would be in the front of the theater to one side. And the top X represents the screen that the person sees in the theater and themselves in the screen. So we have the projection booth location, we have the theater, sitting in the theater location, and we have the on-screen location.